A couple of weeks ago, Mr. Haver was asking in the interactive Bible study, he was talking about the events of October 7th and the subsequent events that have been going on in the Holy Land, the land of Israel. And he asked for people's thoughts and opinions on what was going on. And against my better judgment, I launched into a rant. And subsequently, Mr. Haver asked if I would perhaps go into a little bit more detail and expand on what I said that day. So what I'm going to do, hopefully, is give a brief history of Israel, because I believe that this Holy Land, the land of Israel, I believe that if you don't understand history, you can't understand where you are now. If you don't understand what's happened in the past, you can't understand what's going on right now. And so I'd like to give you just a snapshot today. Now, obviously, I'm going to skip a lot of stuff because I'm going to give you like Jim Bald's cut-up version of Cliff Notes version of the Reader's Digest version. Okay, it's really necessarily so skipping a lot. But what I want to do is give you a 32,000-foot snapshot of history. This is what happened. This is how we got to where we are. There are a lot of, all of you have seen the riots in Europe and in America, where there are thousands of people saying several different things. Number one, they're saying that the Jews stole this land from the Palestinians and that the Jews are committing genocide on the Palestinians. They also say that Israel is an apartheid state. And the intellectuals sit around and the higher critics. You'll find in my sermon that I don't necessarily like intellectuals and higher critics. They pontificate that there must be a two-state solution, and that there has to be a two-state solution, and that Israel must be measured in its response. Well, hopefully by the end of this, we'll have a snapshot, a 32,000-foot view of history, and we can come to some conclusions, hopefully. If you'll turn to Genesis 15:4 and verse 7, I'm going to start at the very beginning because this is where it all starts. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's Genesis 15:4 through 7. I'm actually just going to read verse 7. This is God, Genesis 15, verse 7. And he said unto them, I am the Lord that brought you out of Ur of the Chaldees, and I give this land for you to inherit. And dropping down to verse 18, it says, that same day the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, unto your seed have I given this land, from the river Egypt to the great river, from the river Euphrates, the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Kadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. The two things that I want to emphasize here is, number one, that God, Yahweh, made an everlasting covenant with Abraham that this land would go to his descendants. The second thing is that this land was never a contiguous nation or country up to this point. It was always the Hittites, Canaanites, all the ites. And they had these little city-states that were warring against each other. But Yahweh came down and he said, no, this is going to be one contiguous land. For the first time ever, it's going to be one land with one people owning it. So we know the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There was a famine in the land. They go down to Egypt. They come back out. Moses points them into the land. Joshua leads them down. They conquer the land from all the ites, and Israel is born. Israel is born. And now this promise that God made Abraham is fulfilled. It's not all these ites anymore. It's one contiguous land known as Israel. The Israelites never, ever, 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 ever did what God told them to do. And God kept sending them prophets and saying, if you guys don't straighten up, you're going to go into captivity. You better straighten up. They never did. In fact, they disobeyed God so much that the nation split. They were actually at civil war with each other. The northern 10 tribes of Israel and the southern tribe of Judah. They were at war with each other. In fact, the first time Jew is mentioned in the Bible, it's Israel's at war with Jew. So The northern 10 tribes, they didn't listen. God sends the Assyrians in to punish them. The northern 10 tribes go into captivity in Assyria, and they're never heard from again. A lot of theories, not going to go into it. They disappear. Now this land is Judah. Judah is not far behind. Judah, they disobeyed as well. They just never could seem to get it right. So God sends Babylon in to punish them. And Babylon comes in and takes the Jews and takes them into captivity in Babylon. This is a song that we've sung in the church, by the waters of Babylon, there I wept and there sat down, hung our hearts on the willow tree. We've all said that. That's what's happening here. These Jews are in captivity in Babylon. But a fascinating thing happens while they're in captivity in Babylon. Cyrus, the king of Persia, comes down and captures Babylon. And basically, he just takes over the entire government of Babylon. And so now it's the Persian Empire. There were a lot of Jewish people who were high-ranking in the Persian government and had the ear of the emperor. And he began to let some of these people, Jewish people, go. And the first Jews came back to Judah in about 538 BC. Ezra and Nehemiah, if you want to read this story in the Bible, Ezra and Nehemiah tells the whole story about a lot of these Jews returning to the land, rebuilding the temple, rebuilding Jerusalem, and establishing a nation again. It's Judah again. The emperor says, all the Jews that want to go home, y'all go. If you want to stay here, that's cool. A lot of them stayed there. A lot of them went back to Judah, and Judah is actually a nation, again, under the auspices of the Persian Empire. They were under the control of the Persian Empire, but Judah is back with a temple. Now, as always goes in history, peace never lasts. And the Holy Land is the bloodiest and most contested piece of real estate on the entire planet. It has been conquered more times than any other piece of property. It's been a horrid bloodbath from the beginning of time. Anyway, peace can never last. You know about Alexander the Great. Later on, his generals come in and they conquer this land that's called Judah. And Antiochus IV, we all know about Antiochus IV in the churches of God because he did a horrid thing. When he conquered Judah, he went into the temple and he set up a statue of Apollo in the temple, in Yahweh's temple, in the Holy of Holies. And on Yahweh's altar, he sacrificed swine blood to Apollo. It was horrible. It was devastating. The Jewish people, the Greeks, their philosophy when they conquered a nation, they wanted to turn everybody Greek. They made them take their religious customs, their government, their dress, their lifestyle. They tried to force everyone to become Greek. And consequently, I can't say the things the Greeks did to the Jews from the pulpit, but it was horrid. It was just horrid. They would force them to eat pig meat, and if they didn't, they would kill them. It was, and that's the things I can talk about. Anyway, it was horrible. Well, the Jews didn't like this, and they led a guy named Judas Maccabeus led a revolt. You can read about the Maccabeus revolt in the Catholic version of Scripture, Maccabees 1 and Maccabees 2. And his brother actually set up after let me back up. I'm getting ahead of myself here. We say Maccabees, a lot of people say Maccabees, that the word actually is macabre. That's where we get the word macabre from in our English language, is because they were pretty macabre in their dealings with the Greeks, but really the Greeks deserved it, so that's a different story. But this is also where we get the story of the Festival of Lights, or Hanukkah, because when they cleansed the temple from the defilement, the oil lasted longer. Judas Maccabee's brother set up a kingdom at this point, and it was known as the Hasmonean dynasty. And so Judah is one contiguous land again. And it's under the Hasmonean dynasty. Well, again, peace never lasts very long. The Romans came in and conquered. But they basically set up a vassalage. And the Roman rule was not like the Greek rule. And I think that's why the Roman rule grew into the empire that it did grow into and lasted so much longer than the Greeks, because the Romans had a different philosophy. They basically let the nations that they conquered live the way they always had. They kept their own religion. They kept their own kings even. They kept their own government. They kept their own traditions and lifestyle. It's just you do it under the auspices of the Roman Empire. And if you get out of line, we crack the whip. But nonetheless, even though the Romans were much easier on the Jews than the Greeks were, the Jews chafed under Roman rule, and there were little uprisings. And every time there was an uprising, the Roman Empire would clamp down harder and harder and harder on the Jews. And this is why the Romans finally got rid of the Hasmonean king. They said, "You're not king anymore," and they instituted Herod the Great as the king. And they also took the high priest, Annas, and they kicked him out, and they said, okay, Caiaphas is going to be the high priest now. He was Roman appointed. Herod and Caiaphas were Roman appointed high priest and king. That's why when Jesus was brought before the high priest at his trial, there were two high priests. You think, well, how can there be two high priests? Well, that's how it happened. Now, a thing that happened at this point, up to this point, this land had been known as Judah. It's been known as Judah forever. It was under Persian control, Babylonian control, Egyptian control, under a lot of control, but it was still this one contiguous nation that Yahweh had told Abraham. It was Judah. The Romans wanted to stick it to the Jews. They did not like the Jews. And so at this point, they renamed this land. They renamed this land in Latin Philistia. They renamed it Philistia, which is Philistine, because they knew the Philistines were the ancient enemies of the Jews. And so they said, just to stick it to them, we're going to call this land the Philistine land. In English, that's called Palestine. Palestine. So now this land that had been known forever as Judah is now Palestine, because the Romans renamed it. But the thing to remember is this land, just because they renamed it, didn't change the fact that this is a contiguous land. And the thing that we have to understand, that in this contiguous land, there were Jews living in this land. There were Romans living in this land. There were Greeks living in this land. There were Egyptians living in this land. There were a bunch of people, a lot of different peoples, living in the land called Palestine. But it's not a people. Palestine is not a people, it's a region. Palestine is not a people, it's a region. Time goes on, the Jews revolt again, and we know in 70 AD, the Romans had finally had enough, and they wipe out Jerusalem, they tear down the temple, and the Romans take the Jews that were in the Jerusalem environment and take them all the way to slavery, into slavery. A lot of Jews went into slavery at this point, but there were a lot of Jews still left, along with the Romans and the Greeks and the Samaritans and the Egyptians and a bunch of other people living in this land called Palestine. Rome, the Roman Empire, grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. And it gets to a point where administratively they decide to make a split from that Western Empire to the Eastern Empire. It was just such a vast empire to rule, it was really hard to govern the entire empire from one place. And this is where Eastern Rome and Western Rome split. Western Rome collapsed really about 476 AD, or CE, AD, whichever you look at. It didn't last very long. But the Eastern Empire of Rome became what was known as Eastern Rome, the Holy Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, Eastern Orthodox. There are a lot of terms that are thrown around about this Eastern Roman Empire. And it was basically set up by Constantine. He moved the capital of the Roman Empire from Rome to Byzantium. He moved it to Byzantium because that was the center of the world. I mean, it was the hub through which all the commerce flowed. Is that right? And So that was a perfect spot to set up a kingdom. And since he was an emperor, he changed the name. He changed the name to Constantinople. He named it after himself because you get to do that when you're the emperor. So from then on, this land was known as Constantinople. Constantinople. Now, this is what became known as the Holy Roman Empire, because Constantine supposedly turned to Christianity and changed the Roman Empire, which had lasted for a long, long time, into the Holy Roman Empire, supposedly. You know what happened here because we in the church have talked about the Council of Nicaea that happened in 325. We've discussed that a lot in our congregations. That happened here, up near Constantinople in the Holy Roman Empire. So basically, the Holy Roman Empire goes on, and they're still in control of this land down here called Palestine. And then in 637, there was an Arab invasion of the Holy Land, and they took over. They did not conquer the empire, the Byzantine Empire, but they did conquer the Holy Land. There were pilgrims who used to come from the Holy Roman Empire down to Jerusalem, and they were being molested by the Arabs, and the Roman Empire said, hey, we're not going to have that. So they came back down and reconquered the Holy Land in around 1888. This went on into, excuse me just a second. This went back and forth with what's known as the Byzantine Arab Wars. Holy Roman Empire would come down and conquer it, then the Arabs would come in and conquer it. And then the Byzantine Empire would come down and conquer it, and the Arabs would come in and conquer it. And this went on for a long, long time. Till about 1050. And then something interesting happened at this point. This is the Crusades. I'm not going to talk about the Crusades. It's just bloody and horrible and nasty. But what I do want you to understand is that this Holy Roman Empire, this Eastern Greek, Eastern Orthodox Holy Roman Empire joined up with the Catholic Europeans. And they didn't get along very well. They had their own little squabbles and wars, but they decided that they would become loose allies and come down and free the Holy Land from the infidels. And they would come down and wipe out everybody that was living there, and then the Arabs would come in and wipe out everybody that was living there. And it's just next 2 centuries are just a bloodbath. The one thing I want you to I want to emphasize is that the Jews during this period got along great with the Arabs, and they fought with the Arabs against the Crusaders. And the reason is the Arabs gave the Jews great freedom, and they lived and worked in Jerusalem and Palestine, and every time the Crusaders came down, they would kick them out of Jerusalem, kill them all, and kick them out of Jerusalem, wouldn't let them back in. The Arabs were allied with the Jews against the Crusaders. This went on until 1291, give or take, and then that was the end of the Crusades, and it was under Arab control from then on for a while, until it was under Arab Muslim control for a long, long time, until the Ottoman Turks in 1453, with Sultan Mehmed II, came in of the Ottoman Turks and conquered the Byzantine Holy Roman Empire. He came in and conquered and drove them out, and that Holy Roman Empire moved west. Really, in 1,000-foot view historical terms, that was kind of the death knell of the Holy Roman Empire. I understand that it continued to go on. We can't get into all that. It moved farther and farther west, but really that was the end of its height of power when the Ottoman Turks conquered. The Ottoman Turks, well, they conquered the Byzantine Empire, but they actually didn't conquer the land of Palestine. Let's see, there's a date, there's a point at which they conquered Palestine too. It's in 1517. The Ottomans conquered the Holy Land, and it was Palestine was under the Ottoman Turk rule all the way until the end of World War I. It was under Ottoman Turk control for a long, long, long time of history. What I want to emphasize at this point, though, is this land called Palestine is still peopled. There are still a lot of different peoples, only now there's some new players in the mix because a bunch of people have moved in over the centuries. So this land of Palestine at this time, there's Jews, there's Arabs, there's Armenians, there's Turks, there's Greeks, there's Syrians, there's Egyptians. There are a bunch of different people living in Palestine. Okay? Bunch of different people living in Palestine. The Ottoman Turk Empire fell at the end of World War I in 1922. They were on the wrong side of World War I. They lost. To the victor go the spoils. The League of Nations partitions up the Middle East, and they give Lebanon and Syria to the French, and they give Palestine to the British Empire. Interesting vignette of history is the Arabs fought with the British Empire against the Ottoman Turks. And the Ottoman Turks were aligned with the Germans. They lost, and so this area, this Palestine area, falls under United Kingdom or British rule. In 1917, there was a thing called the Balfour Declaration. There had been a lot of pogroms in Russia and in Europe, a lot of displaced Jews, a lot of unhappy people. There was an idea born in the 1800s of Zionism for a homeland for the Jews, and with these hurting and displaced people, there were, for political considerations, a lot of people in Britain who wanted to create a homeland for the Jews. That really never gained a whole lot of traction until the end of World War II. The end of World War II, the United Nations, not the League of Nations. The League of Nations is dead now because it couldn't stop World War II. So now we have a new United Nations. The United Nations, the entire world saw what had happened under Nazi Germany and the concentration camps and the horrors of the SS Party and the Gestapos. And they said, something has to be done. Something has to be done. And the entire world decided, along with the UN, that these Jews must have a homeland. These Jews must have a homeland. And so they decided, there were a lot of people in Britain who wanted to give, it was a massive swath of land to the Jews. The Arabs, wall-eyed fit, they said, no way, you're not giving all that land to the Jews. So they came up with a partition plan. And if you look at your handout, this UN Partition Plan, Resolution 181, 1947, you can see that. As you can see on that map, that blue or purple, whatever color that is the land that they were going to give the Jews. The pink area is what they were going to give to to the Arabs, what they are now calling Palestinians. And this is what I want to make clear, brethren. Something weird happens here in 1947 or around that time frame. Suddenly, Palestine and Judah, for 2,000 years, it's been this contiguous land, and we talked about all the different people that lived in Palestine, all these different nationalities. Suddenly, Palestinian means Arab, and only Arab. There was a switch there. There's no such thing as a Palestinian people named Arab Palestinian people. That's never happened. 4,000 years of history. And all of a sudden we redefine a term. So the majority of it went to the Arabs. You look at this pink section, the majority of Israel went to the Arabs. This blue section over here along Tel Aviv, don't hold me to, these are not exact numbers, but it's approximately 8 to maybe 14 miles wide. Think about that for a second, what I just said. 8 to 14 miles wide and maybe 80, don't hold me, those are not exact numbers, 80 miles long, give or take. That's, brethren, that's from Gladewater to Big Sandy. That's how wide the land was that they gave the Jews. And north and south about 80 miles. The whole section down at the bottom, the Negev Desert, it's just mountainous desert, nothing but Bedouins living down there, so it wasn't really worth anything. So they have this tiny little stretch of land. If you guys look at this, the handout I have in Israel and the Gaza Strip, everything hits close to home. I'll let you look at that. I'm not going to talk about it. I'll let you look at that at your own leisure at home. What I want you to glance at, though, is this is an Israel map superimposed over Texas so you can get an idea of scale. And also the whole Middle East superimposed over Texas up to like Alabama, Mississippi, Florida. And you'll see it's just tiny. Israel, the north tip of Israel is about Temple, Texas, and the southern tip is about Corpus Christi. But that's the way Israel is now. Hold up this partition plan next to that tiny little piece, and you'll see you got a little area about the size of San Antonio that they gave the Jews. It wasn't much. You talk about a two-state solution, that was your two-state solution right there with the partition plan. That was it. The Arabs got most of it. But you had a bunch of Jews fresh out of the concentration camps, out of Dachau, and the horrors of what went on in Europe and Poland. And the UN and the world said, here's your little piece of property between Gladewater and Big Sandy. And they said, we'll take it. We'll take it. Yes, please, thank you. So the day that Israel was born, all the Arab nations around, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, they all attacked Israel. And these fledgling fighters, fresh out of the concentration camps, a miracle happened. They won. They won. I want you, if you would please look at events leading to the Six-Day War. And I'm not talking about that yet, I'm just talking about the map. If you hold that map up with a partition plan, you'll notice that this Israel here is a lot bigger than this original partition plan. Israel's a lot bigger nation. I mean, it's still tiny, don't get me wrong, but it is bigger. The reason it's bigger is because when all those nations attacked Israel and they fought back and won, they actually gained some territory. Now, I'm sorry, but the entire world gave them that little swath, and the Arabs started it and said, no, you're not going to have it. And they fought back and they won. Throughout the history of all mankind, to the victor go the spoils of war. I'm sorry. They shouldn't have attacked. They should have just left them alone, and we wouldn't be talking about it today. They'd still be on their little swath of land. So in 1948, Israel's born, and time goes on, and we come to the Six-Day War. Not going to get into that a whole lot, but as you can see, this is the handout, the Six-Day War. Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt all decided, okay, we've had enough of these Jews, we're going to wipe them out, and we're going to kill them all and drive them into the sea. The problem was they were having water disputes. The only thing that feeds this entire area is the Jordan River. And the Syrians and Lebanese and Jordanians were taking a lot of the water. And the other part was the Egyptians were having a shipping blockade on Israel. And so tensions were horribly high. They were terribly, terribly high. And all these nations, this is a map of the troop movements, all these different nations surrounded Israel and parked their tanks all the way around the border. And a attack was imminent. I mean, The Israelis, it wasn't hidden. The Israelis are looking out, they're like, man, look at all these tanks. They're aimed right at us. What are we going to do? They knew they were going to be attacked. So rather than be attacked, they launched a preemptive strike. And all these nations came down to wipe out the Jews, and a miracle happened. They won. Israel won again. This time, this whole white area here, they conquered that. That's part of Israel now, and that's called the West Bank, or the disputed territories. Now, what I'd like to mention at this point is that ever since 1948, all of the, I'm going to call them Palestinians, it's just part of our lexicon, but you understand how I feel about a made-up term, but I'll call them Palestinians. All the Palestinians that were in the land of Israel during the partition plan and what they conquered afterward, all of those Arabs are de facto Israeli citizens. They're Israeli citizens now. There are Arab Israelis that serve in the Knesset. They serve on the Supreme Court. There are governors. There are entire police forces. There are Palestinian police forces in Israel. It is not an apartheid government. They are Israeli citizens. In 1973, it comes the Yom Kippur War. In the Yom Kippur War, all of the Arab nations decided to get together, and they're going to solve this pesky Jewish problem once and for all. And they amassed the most gigantic army that you can ever imagine. Let me read to you the list. It was Kuwait, Tanzania, Algeria, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Morocco. All got together and said, we're going to solve this pesky Jewish problem once and for all, and we're going to drive them from the river to the sea. You hear that a lot, from the river to the sea. What that means is they're going to drive them into the Mediterranean and kill them all. And they launch an attack. And then there are two nations that I'm going to tell you who were allied with this Arab League that you are not going to believe me. You're going to have to look it up and then verify it. Because there were two nations that joined, and if you ever want to check your moral compass by who your allies are, this would have been a good place to do it, because the two nations that joined were the North Koreans and the Cubans. North Korea and Cuba sent men and arms to this Arab League to attack the Jews. North Korea. There has been two-state solutions offered over and over and over and over and over again. Yasser Arafat himself, he's captured on camera admitting that the only reason, Yasser Arafat said on camera, the only reason that I signed the peace deal was so that the Israelis would relax and he could launch more terrorist attacks. In 1947, there was offered a two-state solution. All of these were basically two-state solutions. 1947, the Jews accepted it, the Palestinians rejected it. In 1979, there was the Arab-Israeli peace deal. The Jews accepted it, the Palestinians rejected it. There were the Oslo Accords. The Jews accepted it, the Palestinians rejected it. There was the Camp David proposal. The Jews accepted it, the Palestinians rejected it. There was the Gaza withdrawal in 2005. Jews accepted it, Palestinians rejected it. There was a 2008 peace plan. Jews accepted it, Palestinians rejected it. And then there was Donald Trump's deal of the century, and believe me, it really was a deal of the century. They didn't even read it. The Palestinians rejected it without even reading it. And this is a dirty little secret that happened in the 73 war, when it became clear that Israel was going to win, there were a lot of Jews over the next several weeks and months there were a lot of Palestinians that were afraid of retribution from the Jews, and they wanted to get out of there. They wanted to get the heck out of Dodge. So they tried running to Jordan. Brothers, save us. Accounts vary, but somewhere between 3,000 and 6,000 Palestinians were mowed down by Jordanians. Not going to let you in my country. They're brothers. While we're on that subject, there are over 40 Muslim countries in the world with 1.8 billion people. You would think with 1.8 billion people, you could kind of say, guys, gee whiz, you guys are having a hard time. Come live with us. Come stay with us. Crickets. Silence. No takers. Because the truth of the matter is, they would rather kill Jews than save their brothers. In Gaza in 2006, there was a land for peace deal. One more time, the Jews thought they'd try it one more time, and they built an entire city-state down in Gaza. And they built hospitals, they built schools, the Jews did. Built hospitals, they built schools, they built water plants, they set up electrical grids. They set up governmental infrastructure, and they gave it to the Palestinians, and they said, here you guys go. It's all yours. Please just leave us alone. Please. It's yours. And there has not been a foot set in Gaza since 2006 until this recent incursion. It's theirs. It was theirs. Just leave us alone. Please just leave us alone. Immediately, the Palestinians began to dismantle the infrastructure and use it to dig tunnels and launch rockets and kill Jews. 2006, there were free and open elections in Gaza, and they elected Hamas. They elected Hamas. They knew who Hamas was. And they elected them. In the United States of America, we have two basic governing documents. It's the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights, this is a document that was at the founding of our fathers that we try and live by. And it says, this is who we are as a people. And this is what we believe. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights. This is who we are. This is what we believe. Hamas also has a constitution. It's called the Hamas Covenant. It's their constitution. It's their declaration to the world. This is who I am, and this is what I believe. This is who I am, and this is what I believe. There are 36 articles in this document. I'm going to read just a couple of them. Remember, this is their constitution, if you will. This is who I am, and this is what I believe. Peace initiatives and so-called peaceful resolutions and international conferences are in contradiction to the principles of Islamic resistance movement. These principles are no more than a means to appoint infidels as arbitrators of the lands of Islam. There is no solution for Palestine problem except by jihad. Initiatives, proposals, international conferences, and treaties are a waste of time and an exercise in futility. This is who I am, and what I believe. Treaties are a waste of time because we have to have jihad. Number 2, the day the enemies usurp a part of Muslim land, jihad becomes the individual duty of every Muslim. In the face of the Jews' usurpation, it is compulsory that the banner of jihad must be raised. Ranks will close, fighters joining other fighters, and masses everywhere in the Islamic world will come forward in response to the duty, loudly proclaiming, "Hail to jihad!" The cry will reach the heavens and will go on being resounded until liberation is achieved, the invaders vanquished and killed, and Allah's victory comes about. Their constitution says they want to kill the Jews. And that's the only thing that will satisfy them. This is who I am and what I believe. I said I was going to read 2. I have to read one last one. This is Article 7. The day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight Jews and kill them. Then the Jews will hide behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees will cry out, "O Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me. Come and kill him." That's Article 7. I don't know how you negotiate with evil like that. I don't know. Hamas uses their people as human shields. What they do is they've dug a vast tunnel network underneath the Gaza Strip all the way into Israel. And they set up their command centers and equipment and armaments underneath hospitals and schools. And they launch rockets from the tops of elementary schools into Israel. And since 2006, they have fired, I don't even know, some days there are over 100 rockets a day being shot from Gaza into Israel. One after another, after another, after another. Israel has what they call the Iron Dome, and it's set up, and it's a computerized missile launching system that shoots down some of the rockets, most of them, some get through, of the rockets that Hamas fires on them. But it gets to a point when they've launched rocket after rocket after rocket after rocket after rocket. It's like we've got to do something. And I will say right now, no one has ever waged as righteous a war as the Israelis. The Americans sure never did. Because what they will do is they will say, look, this elementary school, they're launching rockets, they're killing us from this thing. And for 48 hours, they broadcast on cell phones and radio and TV. They say, we're going to take out this school. We're going to take it out because they're launching rockets from it. We're going to take it out, and they keep pinging them over and over again for 48 hours. Hamas will not let the people leave. They actually have shot people who try to leave. They use their people as human shields. I have to be careful. And so finally, after all this warning, Israel will fire a rocket and take it out, and immediately, within minutes, imams are in the mosques celebrating, saying, praise jihad. All these kids got killed. Praise jihad. They're jihadists. They're martyrs. They're martyrs for the freedom, for our freedom. And we'll use this in Europe and America against the Jews. This is not in secret. They broadcast it on the internet. You know, America never did that. We never gave 48 hours notice to anybody. We just bombed them. You know, we killed a lot of civilians in Germany. A lot of kids. We did the same in Japan. You know, in Pearl Harbor, and that's another thing, they talk about this proportional response. America never gave a proportional response. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, did we say, okay, our response must be proportional? So we're going to go to Japan, and we bomb Japan, we kill 3,000 people there. Whew, we're out of World War II. That was a proportional response. The idea is lunacy. It's lunacy. On October 7th, Hamas launched an attack on Israel. On that last great day of the feast, that day when Jesus got up and spoke. Brethren, I am a firm believer that there are things that should not be said from the pulpit. But I'm also a firm believer that sometimes truth needs to be spoken. And so Hamas launches this attack on Israel on the last great day of the feast. And a music festival took the brunt of the attack. Just a bunch of kids out in the desert having a concert. These are kids having a concert, music concert. It was a rave. It was a peace rave of all things. A peace rave. Just a bunch of kids. So Hamas launches an aerial attack. They come into Israel. They break down the fences and head north. And every village and township and car and kibbutz that they come across, they murder and massacre everybody in it. Grandmothers, grandfathers, children, babies, everything living they killed. There was a mother whose baby was ripped from her stomach and the child dashed against the ceiling. They were filming it. Hamas was filming it. And these poor kids, just at a rave, took the brunt of it. And they machine gunned them down. They hacked them to pieces. They beheaded them. And they took these beautiful little girls and they raped them. And they dragged their naked dead bodies through Gaza, kicking these bodies and spitting on them and saying, Allah Akbar! God is great! God is great! We killed and we raped these babies. Let me tell you, brethren, if you're God, if you're celebrating that you raped and killed little kids and you're celebrating and saying God is great, your God is not God. Your God is another entity entirely. It's a different entity. I'm almost done. I know I'm running out of time. Hebrew and Aramaic are similar. I wouldn't call them sister languages, but there are a lot of similarities between Arabic and Hebrew. A lot of similarities. In Arabic, Hamas means zeal. It just means zeal. That can be good or bad, I guess. But one has to remember the SS and the Nazis were very zealous at killing Jews. They were zealous. Hamas means zealous. But Hamas is a Hebrew word. Hamas is a Hebrew word. It's found several times in Scripture. I would like you to turn to one of those places. Genesis 6. Hamas is a Hebrew word. Genesis 6 and verse 11. Now here, God is telling Noah why he's going to wipe out the earth, why he's going to kill everybody on it. And he tells them, this is the reason. This is the reason why I'm going to destroy the earth. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, For all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them and the earth. The Hebrew word Hamas is violence in this scripture here. Violence. But the Hebrew connotation, it doesn't just mean violence. It means anything that is godly or just or righteous. It's violence against that. It's violence against God. It's violence against anything that is right and proper and good and godly and just. It's violence against that. I'm going to read this one more time using the Hebrew word Hamas. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with Hamas. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, and all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. And God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with Hamas. And through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth. God destroyed the earth at the time of Noah because of Hamas. At the beginning of this sermon, there were some statements that were made that we went over, that this land was stolen from the Palestinians. This land was not stolen. It was given to them by the entire world, the United Nations, in 1947. It was not stolen. And it wasn't stolen from the Palestinians because there's no such thing, actually, as a Palestinian, meaning Arab. We went through 4,000 years of history. And there were all kinds of different people living in this Palestinian region. Palestinian region for 4,000 years meant the people living in the region, not Arabs. It's a made-up term. It's a made-up idea. That Israel is an apartheid state. Israel is not an apartheid state. There are Palestinian police forces. There are Arabs in the Knesset. There are Arabs on the Supreme Court. It's not an apartheid state. And the intellectuals who pontificate about this two-state solution, we read the list. It's been offered over and over and over and over and over and over again, and the Palestinians reject it every single time. Because the dirty little secret is they would rather kill Jews than protect their own people.